and welcome to the AA Show. It's my new podcast. Should I call it Decrypted or something else? I'm just kidding. This is a podcast setup that I'm experimenting with. Let me know on Instagram if that's something that you're interested in. But I'm here in New Delhi, far away from Tech Today HQ, for a special event, Media Tech Diaries. It's a conclave, a summit where the world's best social media creators from YouTube, your favorite Instagrammers from the US, the UK, Europe, all get together with us here in India, and we discuss what's happening in the world of AI, auto, the chipset wars, all the things that the top companies are working on nowadays. So I obviously spent some time with these creators, and we spoke about a bunch of things. One thing was a viral reel that I put up on the India Today Instagram, which happened to be about a social media ban for children under the age of 16, a proposed ban in Australia. But everyone in India was up in arms and talking about it, so much that they had to say about a proposed ban. What does it mean around the world? So who better to speak to about this proposed ban than the stakeholders themselves? That's a conversation we'll get to. But first, what was this social media ban news all about? Here's a special report.
Australia is looking to introduce an age verification system that will block children from accessing social media platforms. This blocking will rely on age verification methods like biometrics or government identification to enforce a social media age cutoff. Such methods have never been tried before in any part of the world, as Australia looks to protect its kids from the risks associated with excessive use of social media. Australian Communications Minister Michelle Rowland confirmed that the affected platforms will include Meta's Instagram and Facebook, TikTok, and likely Alphabet's YouTube. Prime Minister Albanese further emphasized that this initiative is designed to support parents who are deeply concerned about their children's online safety. The ban was even met with support from the opposition party, as Australia looks to enforce one of the toughest legislations in this matter. Countries like France and USA also have similar measures in place. Kids under 15 in France cannot use social media, however these restrictions can be bypassed with parental consent, whereas in the US, the age restriction is for children under 13. Australia will not make any exemptions for children who have parental consent or who already have accounts. If the legislation passes, all children under the age of 16 will be banned from using social media. The country wants the owners to be on social media platforms to demonstrate that they are taking reasonable steps to prevent access to children, rather than giving the responsibility to parents or young people. The new legislation will be introduced into the Australian Parliament this year, and the laws will come into effect as soon as 2025, once they are ratified by the lawmakers.
A social media ban might sound far-fetched, but they're considering this in Australia, like you saw in the previous story. What I want to understand, though, is how will the stakeholders be impacted by such a social media ban? And it's not going to be a monologue. I have two very special guests with me, Tarun Pathak of Counterpoint Research, an absolute rock star who understands the tech space like no other, and someone who will be impacted with a big community from Australia, from India, from Bombay to LA, Michael Josh. Pleasure to have you guys on the show. We're here, of course, for a very special event, a Media Tech Summit here in New Delhi. Nice location, isn't it?
Beautiful location.
I want to talk to you, Michael, about a social media ban, because I put up a reel recently and it blew up.
Right.
And you had so many people commenting saying a social media ban for children under the age of 16 should be imposed. Even in countries like India, someone from the US said it as well.
Right.
Is it practical? Do you think that's something that can actually be done? What are the pros? What are the cons?
Well, first of all, I'm a creator, so I'm going to be affected by this. Definitely don't want that to happen. I feel like social media, like many things in this world, is good as it is bad. And you need to have a balance, but definitely banning things. You know, when you tell your kid no, they're going to find ways of getting what they want.
That's very interesting, Tarun. When you tell your kid no, they're going to find interesting ways to bypass it. Is that really... Is that, you know, when we were in law school, they said the intent of the legislation, the letter of the law, and then the spirit of the law. If something like that came about in other countries, how would your clients react? How would social media creators deal with this?
Yeah, very, very similar argument. Like before coming to this session, I passed this question to a couple of my teenager cousins, and they said their one-line answer was, we'll find way to come around out of this. Even if they put a blanket ban, I don't think it's going to impact us, because that they are so sure, because their life revolves around it. And very interestingly, when we talk to their parents, obviously they look into both the side of things, especially when we are coming out of the pandemic. Do not forget that it's the same social media that helped these kids to get a download of their daily schools or everything what was happening. And as a result of it, what happened that average age of users who are getting a smartphones has actually gone down. It used to be like 14, 15 years. It has gone down to almost like 11 to 12 years. And now once you are given this gadget to these users, it's very difficult for them to understand why are you putting a ban on this. It's very difficult for them to understand. They just shrugged it like it's not going to happen.
Right, and knowledge is power, right? And I feel like this generation gets their knowledge from a different source. You know, probably they read books less, but they go on the internet. They can learn about anything they want. My young 3-year-old nephew, from time to time will be allowed to watch videos. He watches videos on YouTube and learns counting. He's learning addition and multiplication at 3 years old. It's a different kind of generation, so it's also hard to kind of impose our beliefs based on the boxes that we're used to on a generation that is a digital these are digital natives. They grew up with this technology.
There's so many talented creators here under one roof. Michael is the most special case because you've been a journalist before and then you transitioned a sort of a hybrid, the way I like to approach content as well. You spoke about people consuming content on social media, news, e-learning, stuff like that. But then you need credibility. You need to ensure that the content these kids are getting, let's play devil's advocate for a minute, is credible, is reliable, and it's responsibly reported. That's not happening as much on social media.
Right. Well, at the end of the day, it all happens in a household, right? So like as a parent, you choose how much access you want to give your kids, and you choose if you want to watch over the kind of content they consume. But that has to happen in a home, because where else do they turn to for guidance?
Tarun, do you think
Don't starve them.
Don't starve them.
Yeah.
So then there has to be a middle ground. Is that the approach? Because it can't be a blanket ban and it can't be unfettered access. There's a middle ground perhaps?
Yes, definitely. I think we can rely on technology again here. We talk a lot about AI and Gen AI. Why not look at that technology to solve this? Look at this as a problem, right? If your kid is watching, they got a notification. What if there is a parental control on other device that immediately gets a notification that there's something that is not wrong, what is happening on your kid's phone or something? You need to give them controls. Very interesting point why this is important, why we do not need to put a blanket ban on this, because in India, if you go to rural India, not many people, there was some survey, they were saying like 87% can read books, but almost all of them can navigate how to use a smartphone. That's a very interesting stat, because these days, like Michael said, digital natives, we can't just look at that, but at the same time, the more you use technology, the more you get dependent on it. And we use this word addiction, very synonymous with what is happening with the kids. We always say them they are addicted to smartphones, they are addicted to something else. But I think we need to draw a fine line between, like I said, almost like 6 hours on the phone. There should be some limitation, especially on the gaming. Now the point is, if you exclude social media, what about gaming? Do you want to include into that? Because that's where they are spending a lot of their time as well.
And I'm not going to tell parents how to parent their children, right?
I don't think any of us have a locus standi there yet.
I believe that this generation, if there's one skill that you should teach your children, is critical thinking. Because at the end of the day, they're going to consume whatever they want, no matter what you say they can or cannot do. But at the end of the day, at least you give them the tools to make that decision, what to believe in and what not to believe in, right? Or to ask questions.
Fair enough. So there is a middle path, and it's good to get creators together to have this conversation. My only piece being, this is something that's blowing up all over the internet, and it's nice to have these conversations. Thank you for joining us in this special chat. And most importantly, let's actually get to the other stakeholders, which happen to be a lot of young people out on the streets of Mumbai and Delhi, and finding out what they think, what their parents think, and what everyone makes of a scenario, perhaps, where social media is banned for the young ones.
So Australia is planning to ban kids under 16 completely from social media. If such a ban were to be enforced in India, what would your opinion be? Would you be for it or against it?
I'm absolutely for it. I think it's a great ban. I think social media is toxic for children. I know how much it affects us as adults, so it's great if we ban it for kids.
Yeah, I think that it should be banned. Not exactly banned, but there should be some restrictions.
It actually should, because many people, many children are actually very addicted to it, and it should be banned like other countries. Australia, as you said.
I believe yes, a law like this should be enforced in our country as well, because a lot of people misuse social media a lot, especially young teenagers and young adults who are not supervised by their parents, and they use it in a very wrong way. They bully people, harass people, especially celebrities or influential people, and they just don't know how harsh effects these things can have.
So you've just told me that you have a 2-year-old son. Would you want your son to be on social media?
See, in some cases they need to be in social media, because as the growing age and growing in technology and so things, we need them to be in social media. But there should be some parental lock or something which we can monitor and give them some space as we are moving into the technological side.
Isn't social media also helpful for kids to know about what's happening around the world, keep up to date on the current affairs, and also communicate with friends and family alike?
Go to a library. No? Don't you think? Don't you think that kids should learn the history first before going on social media?
They should be taken advantage of on social media. They should have maybe a separate account, separate app maybe for kids to learn about the world. Because right now all I see are kids on TikTok and Instagram doing things kids should not be doing.
What would be the perfect age for kids to start being on social media?
Probably 18.
See, we are getting license in the age of 18, right? Maybe 16 to 18 may be a good age to enroll in social media.
So be it kids or adults, everyone seems to unanimously be in favor of a ban on social media for kids even in India. However, everyone wants some restrictions, some limits, some tweaks based on Australia's complete blanket ban. Remember, the Australian legislation is still not a law. It might become a law in 2025 if the legislation passes. Should the Indian government also take some lessons from Australia? Only time will tell.